Hey you guys, got an interesting game to share. It's not a particularly beautiful or brilliant one. It's a 10-minute rapid that I played this morning and beat a 1600 rated player. But the interesting thing is that it's a good example of when you play a familiar opening and find yourself very quickly in a weird line. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll just go through the game, and then I want to analyze it and see how I can update my own kind of theory notes on this. Right, so the game is I've got the white pieces, so I have e4, e5, and then the Vienna. Then what my opponent seems to do now is to go into a King's Indian approach, right? So with g6, now this is kind of weird, because if I go onto the Explorer now, so this is my games as white, there, and then knight to c3, where's g6? It's all the way down here. It's like the 10th most common move, right? I've only, in fact, seen it 4 times, whereas the top 3 I've seen 500 times, actually 600 times, right? This is a real edge case. G6. Now I have actually won all 4 of those games, weirdly enough. And then we... Ooh, okay, right. I'm seeing new things already. Okay, so we'll go through the game. I'll show you how it goes. So I'm thinking, okay, let's immediately develop and apply pressure. Now development is a key to this, as you will see in the analysis. So black, this is Mansour al-Kanani from Saudi Arabia, right? He fianchettos his bishop, but his bishop is already staring at the back of this pawn's head, which is less than ideal. Okay, I now develop my queen, immediate checkmate threat. Okay, I just want to start issuing threats immediately. Now, knight f6 is a very obvious way to get around that. You develop a piece, you block the threat, and you enable castling, right? So, of course, that's what he plays. So, in fact, that move, you could say, I just almost gave him a gift with that move. Yeah? But I have the initiative. I'm 3-2 up in development, and it's my turn. Now, what I do is move my developed knight a second time. Now, if knight takes and bishop takes, again, we've now got a checkmate threat against f7. My opponent ignores that. Okay, he doesn't want to swap off his developed piece. Why would he? Okay, and now what I need to be thinking about is completing my own development, move this pawn, get this bishop out, maybe pin the knight, that kind of thing. Okay, so I play d3. Although this pawn isn't immediately threatened, at least d3 facilitates this bishop's development. Now he takes and I take back. Okay, but now there's no checkmate threat on f7 because he's castled. Okay, he kicks my bishop with c6. That also has the advantage of opening up a diagonal for queen e. All right, bishop retreats to b3. It's useful. It's defended by 2 pawns, so either of these pawns could in fact move as well. Okay, but it's still on the a2 g8 diagonal, which is where the king is on g8. Right, now my opponent strikes out in the center. So at this point in time, this is move 8. You have to say it does feel like I've lost my initiative. Right, my opponent has got what he wants. He's got his castled king, his fianchettoed bishop. He's got good control over the center, and I've only got 2 pieces developed. Right, on move 8. And by move 8, you can have all your pieces developed. Okay, so we trade off in the middle of the board, and I win a pawn. Okay, now, so obviously there's a choice here, right? This move, if I capture with a queen, I mean, either way the pawn is pinned, but it does mean that this rook can't go to there, because then queen takes there, and it's, well, it's not actually checkmate, but I win a pawn and peel open the king. With bishop, is slightly different. Yes, this pawn's still pinned, but now I'm also threatening to capture on here with the bishop, and if bishop takes, queen takes, and I win another pawn. So queen moves to c7 to prevent that idea. The queen is also now eyeing up c2, which you must be aware of. Okay, so I push c3. Okay, note, My king still isn't castled. I still have 2 pieces undeveloped. So it's actually now, it feels like my opponent is the one who is parrying my threats quite easily and counter-attacking as well, forcing me to respond to what he's doing. Now do I develop? No, I trade off, okay? Because if queen takes back, I can take with the queen, and my opponent is going to be left either way with doubled and isolated pawns, and he's a pawn down, right? So pawn takes here, and now he has 2 isolated pawns and a 4, right? I have a 4 and a 3, okay, on the king side. Now a 3 is far, far better than 2 isolated pawns, far better, right? Probably twice as good at least. Okay, now I develop my bishop. Now he develops his bishop, possibly preparing a discovered attack if this pawn should move at any point. So I have to log that, spot it, log it, don't forget it, keep it in your brain. Okay, bishop c5 now. Again, I'm moving a developed piece a second time. Still, my king isn't castled. We're on move 14. Okay, but I attack his rook. Rook comes across to e8, and now I castle. Right. So I've got reasonable pawn cover here. I am concerned about these pawns, right? So this guy may be attacking the queen. At least this bishop is in the way of this pawn right now. Okay, so he plays queen a5 with a fork, right? And these are the moves where you have to take your time and consider. It took me, 4 seconds. Okay, but I found this move, right? Blocks the attack on the pawn and protects the bishop at the same time. As soon as I saw that move, no brainer, had to play it. Rook comes across now to b8 behind the bishop. I develop my knight. So now I'm starting to think about ideas like get my knight here, get my queen here with a threat on there, for example, right? But this knight has to do something, right? It's done nothing all game so far. Black pushes a pawn into the path of this bishop, but it's also then blocking, I suppose, this diagonal here. I play my queen up. Oh yeah, of course. What did we say we had to remember? This pawn should have a move. Haha, sneaky one, right? So I have to move my queen. So I move my queen here, still trying to have a poke around the king side here. Pawn push now. Grabs space, takes tempo. I have to respond again. Queen retreats, pawn push again. And now I bring in my knight to here. Okay, so there's a few ideas. Like pawn takes, knight takes is an idea, for example. Then I've got 2 attackers on this pawn. Yeah. Also, should this pawn move? You know, I've got knight takes there. Even maybe knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, maybe with check. If the bishop's out the way. And now my opponent appears to sacrifice a bishop. Okay, so I've missed something. Okay, what is it? This pawn is overworked. It's the only defender of c3 and the only defender of the bishop on a3. So if I capture with the pawn now, I lose my own bishop. So I don't do that. I bring my queen in here, having a sniff around this pawn. Bishop comes out, queen comes there, proposing a trade of queens. We trade queens. All right, so now I've lost my 1 pawn advantage. He pushes, we trade off, and this was not the best idea, okay? Because now my rook is pinned on the king, and my knight's under attack, and it's not very good. However, it's a 10-minute game. My opponent is down under 3 minutes now on the clock. So I rotate my knight round. He grabs another pawn, because this is a pin. One thing you have to remember about pins is they ain't going anywhere, right? As long as this bishop can remain there, right? Should this king move, the rook's yours, right? Rook's undefended. There's no trouble. So grab the free pawn. I counterattack the bishop. Again, now what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to play my moves a bit quicker. So now here I'm losing my own focus a little bit. What I should be using is taking my time and crafting something complex and not obvious that's going to eat my opponent's clock, right? Instead, what I'm doing is I'm rushing my own moves. You can see all of these moves are less than 10 seconds, right? It's got about 12 or 13 moves, all of which I bash out. And I just blunder my rook there. However, this rook was on prise anyway. Okay, so in actual fact, knight takes there, that's not a problem. My opponent now plays rook e1, which appears to be a fork, king and knight. Okay, there's one way to resolve this, rook d1. So now my opponent has to make a decision where he can't take the knight and lose the rook. That's not an option. Does he want to trade rooks? We shall see. No, he decides against. Now I grab a pawn. Now my bishop is defending this knight. Okay, just got to log these facts. There's nothing really complex here. Also, my bishop is looking at the pawn on a7. Okay, so my opponent is currently up the exchange. So I've really lost any advantage, and we trade rooks, obviously. I think that's a good idea by black. Now he moves his pawn out of line with the bishop, and I get my king here. So now what I'm wanting to do is just protect these pawns and hope that in 2 minutes he can't make the most of convert his pawn advantage on the king side and cause trouble. So I'm now pushing my pawns onto light squares. Why? Because I want to remove squares away from his bishop. Maybe if I can get a cheeky grab of the bishop, put my king on a dark square to avoid checks, and also to stop his rook from coming in here. Right now, right? Yeah, my knight is currently guarding that square, but if it wasn't, that would be very bad news. Okay, so king here, pushes a pawn. Now I'm maybe thinking about sticking my knight in here, sticking my knight in here. The king comes in, I come back. Maybe, ideas if he puts his rook here, bishop there protected by the knight, and skewering the king and winning the rook. He comes there. I play this move anyway, protected by the knight, because he's down to 47 seconds. So moves, I put my knight into this pocket. He moves his rook in. Now, one thing, yeah, king here now. Rook comes down. Okay, so again, my bishop's guarding this pawn. This pawn can always move to a4. I just sling my bishop up there for no good reason. He comes here, so he's not actually attacking this one. So I just need to play this. Bishop comes around, he's now down to 9 seconds, okay? And here and there, right? I know my pawn's still protected. Purpose of this knight move. Look at the arrangement of these two. Okay, it's in like a 5x2 box. That means a knight on there hits both corners, and boom, and it's going to be all over. Okay, so I got away with that game by the skin of my teeth. What's interesting is that I really didn't know how to respond to this particular attack. So, like we say in the Explorer, I've only actually met this 4 times. If I check my notes, I do actually have a line on this, right at the bottom of my Vienna notes. Let's just pull that up, okay? So here's my Vienna other kind of repertoire notes, and if we look here, that's all I have. If g6, which is questionable, you should play d4. Now, obviously, I didn't check my notes during the game, okay? But let's now look at the analysis of the game. Okay, no, it needs to look at the game review and pull that up. Got a bit of a head cold starting now, it's that time of year. Okay, so if you look at the graph here, my opponent had a strong advantage throughout most of the game, right? Here there were a series of 3 blunders, that's interesting. And then finally at the end, obviously I'm in a winning position because he lost his rook. I made 4 blunders in that game, he made 2. Right? So if you go around thinking that 1600s or 1500s don't make blunders, think again. Everyone makes blunders from time to time. Okay, so here's what's interesting. I want to burn into my head how to respond to this. So this is actually an inaccuracy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to I'll rearrange my windows now so that I can have my notes and the screen side by side. Okay, so here we go, and I'm going to resize this so that we can look at both. Okay, so this is it. So this, I mean, and one thing I like to do is kind of give lines names, which helps me to remember them. It might not work for you the same. Okay, so kid line, really, it's the King's Indian Defence, so I'll call it the kid line. So, you know, I've got things like the, you know, the wayward queen line and the semi-copycat and the full copycat, right? Works for me, it's like a mnemonic. Okay, I'll move my colours over here. Okay, so G6 is an inaccuracy, so that's actually question mark shriek, isn't it? Okay, overlooks an opportunity to develop a piece, yes. And that is an inaccuracy. I overlooked an opportunity to threaten winning material. Okay, the best move here, my notes say d4, 'tis indeed d4. Okay, so I'm threatening what? I'm threatening to win that, but by the same token, he can take me. But here's the thing. He takes me, queen takes, right? Look at where my queen is, on this diagonal. And then now, bishop g7 isn't an option, okay? So what I'm gonna do here is, you know, I've got, yeah, in fact, this is here. If e takes d4, queen takes d4, okay? So we could actually make a sideline on this, and then we're +3, okay? White +3 controls A1, H8 diagonal, right? So I'll write that in my notes, and that's the important thing. So let's go back. So clearly, you know, black cannot choose the wine in front of me. Okay, so other options here, and you can see here as well, if we look at, so we're now in the analysis tab rather than the game review, it's showing me the top 3 moves from black's perspective. Okay, so here I could actually update my notes. So e takes d4 is not one of those moves, right? But it's kind of an obvious one that somebody might fall into. So what about d6? If he plays d6, okay, but here, have I got takes, and then trade queens and lose castling rights? I'm not sure. Okay, so d6 here, so if I update my notes again, d6, that's an inaccuracy as well, right? Because knight f3, okay, knight f3, and I'm just about +2, whichever way you look at it now. Yeah. And again, still he can't play this. Knight f3 is excellent. D takes c5. Okay, good. So you can see sometimes it takes the computer a while to change its mind. Okay, so in this instance, it's not knight f3, it's d takes e5. Okay, if d takes e5, the best move actually from black here is d takes e5 again, capturing there. And then, as I've said, we trade queens. Okay, so what I can actually do here is I can even copy all of this, okay, and then I simply paste it into here, paste and match style, and I'll highlight my opponent's moves in magenta, which is the way I do it, right? So it makes it a lot quicker, even to build up these nodes. So d6 here would be an error, okay? But let's go back. So if d6, yes, if d6, that is the move I must do. All right, and whichever way he goes, if knight d, okay, what's the other ones? D takes e5 is best. Knight c6, we capture again. Okay, so I think that's all I really need to know on that. If this, and I can copy this in, right? No, paste it in. So here I'm just using notes on the Mac. right? And then that's absolutely fine. So I don't need to go any further than that. E takes d6, and I'll put smiley face saying we're okay from this point because I'm +3, right? What about knight d7? Again, e takes d6, and we're perfectly fine. Okay, so this is all good. Yeah. So this is just, I mean, this is my method for building up my notes on this. But the point is, and it's kind of slow, right? You can use PGN things. You can go on to Chessable or lots of different platforms to build these repertoires and build PGN files and stuff like that. But I like this laborious manual process because it's making me, you know, and we're a pawn. It's making me interact with the process a bit more, you know. So this is all good. So yeah, quite happy with this. So these are my opponent's options in case of g6. So I need to remember this, right? And I'll just go back. Okay, if g6, we don't play that. We play d4, and he can't take. That's the important thing. But I can take. So what's he going to do? So his options now are d6, which we've just looked at. Knight c6 is the best. Now the other thing that I'll sometimes do as well to facilitate this is try and put them in alphabetical order. So d6 comes first, then e takes d4. Okay, e takes d4 is not good. We've seen that. Yeah. Second one is knight c6, and then finally bishop g7. So let's look at bishop g7 as an idea. Okay, if bishop g7 now, which is what he played in the game on this move, although I'd played that rather than d4, bishop g7 is good. Then it's saying we should take. Then he brings out his knight, and then bishop e3, and we're +1.5 already. So so we take on e4, right? So we go here again, 3, bishop g7, right? 4, d takes e4, e5 is best, and sometimes I'll put an asterisk on to say it's actually the best move. And but the question is why? Right? Understand why it's the best move. Because if you understand why, then everything will make more sense, right? You'll be learning the opening rather than just memorizing the characters on the screen. So here, my concern here is, well, surely he just takes, right? But if he takes, we have knight f3 kicking the bishop. Okay, right. So here, 4, if bishop takes e5, right, we have 5, knight f3 kicks the bishop with tempo, right? And now the bishop has come out of its little hidey hole in the coral over there. But actually bishop c4 is best here, so the computer's changed its mind, right? So bishop c4. But, you know, at the same time, I might think, actually knight f3 I prefer, because it's more my style, right? It makes more sense to me personally as a player. All right, so bishop c4. Now what's good about bishop c4? So I'll just rewind a bit. Now I closed my browser down by accident there. So I know here now that it's d4. Right, so I want to practice making that move, spotting this pattern, making that move, right? And here we are looking at if bishop g7. So like in the game, if he just plows on with his King's Indian ideas, okay, then it's saying we should take the pawn. Okay, take the pawn. And then if bishop takes, what do we do? Right? Now we know that the computer's going to come up with bishop c4, which I kind of like. You know, it's a thematic move. I play it a lot. We could have queen f3 with a checkmate threat, that kind of thing, right? So it was saying it should have brought out the knight, and here bishop c4, only slightly better than knight f3. Okay, but I'll do bishop c4. Okay, so we'll say, why is it good? Well, it looks at f7, for example, yeah? So that's it. That, my friends, is all you need to do. You know, when you come across a new line, win or lose, it doesn't matter, right? Even if you go on to lose the game, the point is to say, I didn't know what to do in that situation, right? And try and learn it, and whatever way works for you. I've shown you how my notes work and how I work. There may be an alternative system that is preferable for you, but you know, whatever it is, knock yourself out, go do it. But I just thought that would be interesting to work through as a little example of, okay, well, what do I do if I'm faced with this in future? And I would hope that next time someone plays a King Indian style against me, that I'll know that d4 is the best move because they can't take, right? Because queen takes, and I'm occupying this file. That's before the bishops even come out, yeah? So just want to remember, very, very simple. That's about all I need to remember on this. I'm not going to go super, super deep into 7, 8, 9 lines of theory. There's no point because I'm not going to be able to remember it, right? But if I can remember this, then I've become a slightly stronger chess player in future. Okay, hope that's been useful. Thanks for watching and see you later.